Hello and welcome to our second live for Local 514. I'm joined by Eloy Rivas Sanchez, a professor and spokesperson for Solidarity Across Borders. Solidarity Across Borders is a migrant justice network located here in Montreal. Eloy, welcome.
Hello, Savannah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in Solidarity Across Borders?
Yes, absolutely. Well, my name is Eloy Rivas Sanchez, as you already mentioned. I just make a living by teaching introductory courses to sociology, international migration, race, class, and ethnicity at Carleton University. I also collaborate with Solidarity Across Borders because it's an organization which I think is doing the right thing, which is to work collectively to promote, to defend, and to support migrant workers here and abroad. And so, yeah, that's what I do with them. And sometimes I help doing any kind of thing that is needed. Sometimes I am a spokesperson, and pretty much around issues around human rights and migrant justice are something close to my heart. So that's why I collaborate with Solidarity Across Borders.
Great, thank you. So in our interview for episode 2, we talked about so much I really wish I could have fit into the episode, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. One of them that was really interesting that we spoke about was your research on the trauma of non-status people, the trauma that they experience. Could you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, absolutely. You know, studies in trauma was not my goal when I started doing research. I normally do research on health, how health, working conditions, how in general the social structures which we live in shape our health, physical and mental health. And so when I started doing my research on undocumented workers in Montreal and also in the south of Ontario, one thing that I noticed is that people have a lot of sleep problems. People, sometimes nightmares and things like that. And it's something that I learned by coincidence talking to people. And so that's how I enter into what is called trauma studies, right? I was the indigenous scholarship has had a very important impact in my academic training and also my social political training, right? And so there's an author, Lakota author from the United States, who developed a theory or a concept that is called historical trauma, right? It's basically a theory that allows us to see how historical forms of oppression in which we live in that we sometimes don't see have a very strong impact in our mental and physical health. And so when looking at the data that she uses to analyze the Dakota population in the United States, and looking at the data I was collecting with undocumented people in Canada, saying, well, actually they match a lot. And one of the things that they match a lot is that the impact in the mental health, it has a very long-lasting effects to the extent that like nightmares, sleep disorders appear in a daily basis after like 2-3 years of living undocumented. And so basically my studies on trauma started doing that, and it's something that I normally now do.
Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit when we last spoke that the threat of deportation, it's almost a trauma in itself. Could you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Being a deportable subject and in the daily life, the first and second year, it doesn't happen much. You just live under stress. But when that happens for a long time, when people have been living with the threat, with the fear of being deported for more than 2-3 years, is some of the things that I learned. People start develop a lot of mental health issues that have a strong effect on them and on their families, and problems related with the weight, problems related with, as I already mentioned, sleep disorders, depression. People talk to me often about, even suicidal tendencies, the will, the need to die, the fear of living, right? And so that's what I have learned. And deportation, being deportable, living under the constant threat of deportation it shapes all that. And so that's what I think is we should look at that, because normally when when people oppose to deportation, myself, I think it's a very bad thing to separate families just because you are trying to make a better life in another country. It's unfair. But when we look at the health effects of deportation, of what is called deportability, we became more aware of how really destructive of the people's lives is the deportation, of the deportation processes, right? Because they are normally long last time. Um, yeah, so that's what I think. How is that link between health effects and the portability?
Okay, thank you for sharing this. So recently there was a strike at the Lavalle Detention Center. So these detention centers, they host people who are in the process of being deported. And some of the prisoners were subjected to really horrifying things, long-term and kind of increased confinement, denied medical care. In a report I read by Ricochet journalist Chris Curtis, he wrote, the air in one inmate's cell was so filthy, he coated his nose with gobs of Vaseline to keep dust out. Um, yeah, really, really hard to hear these things. There was actually, so a protest was hosted outside this deportation center, and CUTV did a video on it. Christian Brown and David Earls put out this video. So I'm just going to play a little clip.
Absolutely.
Alors, c'est tout à votre honneur de vous solidariser ainsi avec ces gens-là parce qu'il y a un lien étroit entre les conditions de vie, la pauvreté, la marginalité et la prison. Il y a un lien étroit entre la prison et la rue. Il faut prendre tous les moyens possibles pour contrer la vague d'éclosion dans les prisons, particulièrement à Bordeaux où c'est là que c'est le plus élevé.
Vous êtes solidaires, vous êtes beaux et belles, vous êtes... Hey, c'est vraiment cool.
Bien, les objectifs aujourd'hui de la manifestation que le STIC a organisée, c'est de sensibiliser là, le gouvernement à cette situation-là, qu'on parle même pas dans les médias. Fait qu'aujourd'hui, on est ici pour crier pour eux autres leur détresse, puis d'être là aussi pour les soutenir, puis voir qu'on les oublie pas.
All right, thanks for checking that out. So as a result of these conditions, the inmates took part in a hunger strike. This was for about 5 days. It ended on March 8th. And I know that Solidarity Across Borders, they were very active online. In particular, I was seeing a lot of posts spreading awareness on this on their Instagram account. Could you talk a little bit about how Solidarity Across Borders tried to provide support to this situation and the detainees experiencing this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's very important. Part of the work of Solidarity Across Borders is to provide, not only to promote the human rights of people who, their dignity and so on, and do rallies and protests, but it's also to provide support. And this is something that I admire very much from my comrades, from my friends of Solidarity Across Borders, which is, we are trying to make justice possible. We are doing it while we provide everyday support to people who need it. And so Solidarity Across Borders, because of that, daily support, right? And everyday life to people who are having a very bad time because of imprisonment or because of deportability, exploitation, and marginalization, and so on. Normally, we receive support. We receive calls from people. People know about the existence of Solidarity Across Borders. So when we receive a call, we need some support because we are having a very bad time here in prison. As you mentioned before, Savannah, the conditions inside of the deportation centers are horrible. But not only the conditions of the deportation centers are horrible, even if they were nice, we think that the existence of jails for people who are trying to get a better life in another country are unmoral it shouldn't exist. And so we receive a call, and people who are involved in anti-imprisonment of migrant workers started to created a committee, which is now working for 5 years, and they started a campaign. And that campaign included, as you well mentioned, online petitions, online activism, let's say, but also something very important, and I want to underline this, is also activism that is on the streets, literally outside the jail, and so on and so forth. The last time I went there was 3 weeks ago, and so they have communication with Solidarity Across Borders, and people were outside of the Lavalle Detention Center, Le Centre de Surveillance de la Migration, I think it's called. And so people in the outside, particularly women, because most of them are women, actually, it's very interesting to underline this, right? Deportation centers, probably they don't target women, but the women are the most affected, and their kids separated from their families. And so we receive calls from women from inside, and giving a speech, a message, a thankful message to Solidarity Across Borders for that work it's been doing. So why I mentioned this? Because the protests that are happening now today for migrant justice and for human rights are taking place online, but also there are people like in Solidarity Across Borders that are actually also on the streets as well, and go to the deportation center to provide support and so on. And so that's what happened. There was a hunger strike, which we think it was fantastic. A hunger strike is a peaceful way to protest against an injustice. It's an act. A strike is an act of disobedience it's very legitimate when somebody is experiencing oppression, and instead of returning or instead of acting by trying to oppress others as well, you disobey, you do things, you disobey the institutions and so on. And that's what we call peaceful resistance, right? And so the strike in a prison, which is, a prison is an institution which is the foundation of violence towards your body, your freedom, your dignity. It affects family, mental health, it separates kids from their parents and so on. And so in a context of so much suffering and distress, and because of that violence, that people engage into hunger strike, it shows the pacific character of the defense of dignity of migrants. So we are very much supportive of strikes. And so we have been engaged in that because of this. We believe that we should respect the dignity of people, particularly of those ones who are having a very hard time just because they had committed the crime, let's say, of trying to live in another place, which is a more decent place. I came from the global south. I was raised in Mexico, which is a wonderful country, but Mexico has a lot of troubles. I don't have to convince you about it, just in the news. And so human security in a lot of countries of the global south is something under threat all the time. It's very thin, it's very, you are a vulnerable subject all the time, particularly if you don't have money, right? And so the reason why people emigrate is because of that. They want to overcome those kind of conditions, which are structural conditions of that shape suffering, that also kill people slowly. So when people try to move around and look for a better place, and they are put in prison, I just find it's just morally unjustifiable. We can't justify that, and we have to raise our voice. A hunger strike against those institutions, I think, are completely defendable, and that's why in Solidarity Across Borders we are so proud of being part of those struggles. Because in the future, because I like to see the future, and not only pointing out problems, in the future when deportation centers and jails doesn't exist anymore, and a future in which we find a way to protect human freedom and human dignity in full, I would like to recall that I was part of these struggles. Apartheid in South Africa was possible through peaceful resistance. We remember Gandhi, right? Strikes, peaceful resistance, and hunger strikes. And so everything, all that is solid melts into the air, used to say Marx. And so when imprisonment melts into the air, when prison melts into the air, I would like to recall that I was doing a little bit for that. Yes.
Thank you. When you mentioned, this process kills their will, have you noticed that, maybe it's almost the goal and possibly a successful goal in some cases to kill the will of people to continue their pursuit of maybe trying to gain status in, I guess, not the legal way?
Yes, absolutely. When I heard, one day I was doing an interview with a person, a non-status, a young woman, wonderful, with a smiley face all the time, hardworking, generous, very involved in volunteering in Montreal and in churches and so on. When I heard one day that after I met her for 3 years, one day she told me, I have lost the will to live. I just don't feel like I don't feel the safe for life anymore. No tengo más ganas de vivir, she told me in Spanish. It was so strong for me to hear that. And at that moment, I realized how strong, how violent can be a system that denies a kid like her, the right to go into school, to make friends, to get a job, to have a life and dignity. And definitely systems as they are set today of exploitation and marginalization, misrecognition and disrespect of non-status people definitely do what you just mentioned, or kill the will to the safe for living, the will to live, the drive to have a life, to have a good life. And that is what the saddest part of all of this is. It is not exaggerated, just standing by, just following what you just mentioned, that a system that denies the human dignity of people because of the bare fact that that person tried to have a better life, to improve their life, is a system that produces death, And studies on migration, we call it social death. You can be alive, but you are dead in all senses. You have no access to social citizenship. You have no access to recognition and dignity. People don't exist anymore. Their existence have been denied. And that is a system that produces death. And we can't allow this to happen. We can't allow this to happen. And you know what? I would like to take just a moment to say this. I think that per people like you, that the work that you are doing, for example, is basically to allow suffering to speak, right? Let's speak about something that is going on, that is not cool, that is happening. It what makes possible to continue the human efforts to save and to protect life. And so what I think about the work, for example, that you are doing now, and the work that Solidarity Across Border does, and the work that Migrant Rights Networks does, and hundreds of people who are doing, research, theater, and so on in matters of migrant justice, it is precisely a collective effort to protect life. They are politics of life, and this is something that we really have to appreciate and continue cultivating, right? Because if we do like nothing happens, we are just like a happy living out of, before the interview, I like tomatoes. I was raised in Mexico, so I like tomatoes, and I can have the tomatoes by like that, I don't have to cook them. And so I had a tomato before I came here to have some energy. And so I was thinking about it, when I was doing my field work, and not before my field work, I had work in agriculture, right? And so people who make possible that we have access to those amazing tomatoes that we ate in the everyday life are people who have been denied in their existence, in their right. And so I was eating something that is based partially on the exploitation and misrecognition of people. And I say, well, I can eat this tomato, and I can be thankful to Jose or Juan who made this possible. But also I can go to visit to Jose and Juan, and I can make an interview with them, and I can talk to people who are trying to work with Jose and Juan to make this a better society. And I think that's you know, it's important that we acknowledge that, and that we acknowledge the collective efforts towards it. Yes, that's yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. No, it's important to think of, you know, so many of the products in our daily lives, they're from many undocumented workers, or, you know, many people from countries such as Mexico who, you know, work so hard and receive such a low pay. Um, it actually reminded me what you were saying in my interview with Mustafa from the Immigrant Workers Center. We were talking a little bit about immigration in Quebec, and how, you know, the CAC had decreased immigration but increased temporary foreign workers. So, you know, there's more immigrants coming into our country, but they don't have, pardon me, our province, but they don't have the chance to gain status or use this time, you know, working in the province to go towards them gaining status. Yes, it's a bit of a backwards policy. But I just wanted to jump back to something you said a little bit earlier about a woman who was in this deportation center, and she had called solidarity across borders. How do you guys, I guess, connect with non-status people? How do you provide your phone numbers so that if they're ever in these crises, they can reach out to you?
Yes, absolutely. There is a web page, Solidarity Cross Borders. Yeah, let me just open it. I'm just gonna open it, okay? Because we just recently changed the phone number, and yeah, that's how people basically, you know, get in touch. There is also the you know, the mouth, how to say, mouth by mouth, and there is a saying, you know, the word of mouth as well. You know, people who know what we do, and you know, you guys are looking for this, probably you can call these people, and and so that's how the people realize. Hold on a second, just to gonna. Last time I remember that I forget to give you the phone numbers of Solidarity Cross Borders, and I think that is it can be useful probably to provide it. Yeah, well, first of all, the web page is solidarityacrossborders.org, right? And the information there, is in everything is in English, in French, in Spanish as well, in several languages. And we have where's the telephone number? I'm gonna look for it. I'm gonna give it to you in a moment. But the web page is a good way to get in contact. You know, send a message, and so that's how people basically know about Solidarity Across Borders. Sometimes through our personal phone numbers. You know, sometimes I receive a call, and people who are in a moment of distress, and another, you know, a colleague or compañero who is doing support work as well, receive a call, and then we send in message or emails to each other or to the members group, and we say, you know, there is a group of persons who need support, who want to do this, and then we create committees and small groups to, you know, to provide that support. And that's what happened exactly in the moment of the hunger strike. Basically, oh, we know that this is going on, so we have to provide support. Who wants to join? Basically, is that it's kind of informally, but it was fine so far. You know, Solidarity Across Borders has been working. It's been around for around 25 years now. I have been with them for 10 years now. And so, you know, it's a solid organization. There is a lot of people who know about the Solidarity Cross Borders work, and so that's basically how people get in touch. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. The hunger strike, this is actually the third time a hunger strike has happened in this detention center. I know you answered this question a little bit, but I just want to talk about it a little bit more. Do you think that these methods of protest are helpful in demanding and generating change?
Yes, I don't think that they are helpful. I think they are needed. We have to do that because, you know, there are always things that can or have to be changed, right? There are no perfect systems in the world. And so I think, it's my personal belief, we have to make those changes possible through peaceful means. And so hunger strike is par excellence a peaceful means to achieve a goal. And, you know, I can live in a situation, in a relationship, in a context in which I am being abused. If I don't raise my voice, if I don't do anything, well, everything is going to remain the same, right? But if I raise my voice by peaceful means, by engaging in, I won't eat, and actually it's a form of self-punishment in some ways, Uh, we have learned, I mean, the independence of India can't be explained without those methods, those tactics. We can make changes possible, and I think that insofar as they are peaceful ways to do it, I fully support them. I think we should do more, not only in the deportation center, but in the workplace as well. There are workplaces in which really things are very tough, and so strikes are for that. In that beautiful capsule that you put before, there was a flag of the industrial workers of the world, right? The industrial workers of the world. We can't understand the advancements of I mean, the 8 hours that we have at the job place, the right to vacation, the minimum wage idea, all those benefits that we have now as workers, some, not all, we can explain them without the existence of the industrial workers of the world, which is an international union that by using a strike and organizing workers having attained so much. And so just I think it's important to recall that. And so that's why I was happy when I saw that flag there. It's just so meaningful.
Thank you for sharing that. So in our interview with for the episode of Local 514, you mentioned the difficulties of becoming a citizen. Could you tell us a little bit about some of these difficulties?
Yes, it's very difficult, and even when you are a citizen, it's always I teach international migration, and one of the things that we have learned in the field of migration studies is that, for example, in Canada, in the United States less, but in Canada, for example, it takes 3 generations to overcome poverty. The kids of the immigrants, the first generation immigrants, still remain in poverty because their parents didn't have access to opportunities, even though they had good credentials and so on and so forth. And it is only until the grandkids arrive that they will have the chance to overcome poverty, because they, there is this capital cultural that you legacy to others, but people, the first generation doesn't take advantage of it because you don't know anybody and so on. And so so what the questions are? I forgot. I lost. Sometimes I lost my
Not a problem. It's totally fine. Just about your experience.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I said, to become a citizen is very difficult. But even when people become citizens, is difficult still. I can say that I am lucky, to be honest, because I have met wonderful people on the way. I now teach at a university. It's something that I feel very thankful for. Very, very thankful for being able to do that. But a lot of people that I know in my same situation, people who finish a PhD or they arrive with a PhD from other countries, they end up, driving cars for others or cleaning factories. And so became a citizen is a very difficult process. It's a very costly process. When I arrived here, I remember Stephen Harper just had changed the law so that Mexicans had to have a visa, right? In the past, they have to have a visa, but when I arrived here, month after I arrived here, I was detained in the airport. In fact, I was asked so many questions: how much money do you have? Where are your ID? So many things, and they took information from me, all sorts of things. And so after 1 month after, Mexicans became on their, the radar of the Canadian state. And basically, these guys are bogus refugee seekers, right? They are not truthful people, and so on. And so that was in 2008. And so after that time, I engaged in the process of asking, of trying to get a permanent residence. And it was incredibly difficult. You have to translate everything. You have to translate everything that you say. You have to prove everything that you have said. And that is very costly. And that assumes that you have people in your country of origin which can send you documents. It assumes that you have money to do all that. And so that process, which took me like 2 years, It was incredible difficult. It was very difficult. It's such a coincidence because today in my class of international migration, we were talking about the refugee crisis. And so at some point, I couldn't, I couldn't help but to actually provide my students with my example and why people would flee their countries. And I was explaining that I was a human rights officer before arriving here. I was in charge of a national program of human rights for people living with HIV/AIDS, sex workers, and so on. At that time, the government of the very right-wing government arrived, the government of Felipe Calderon. And so basically, he started a war against human rights defenders. And that word implied not necessarily, some people actually were disappeared and so on and so forth, friends of mine. But some others who used to work in human rights, you just start find a lot of difficulty to move forward, to do your thing. You are working in a place promoting human rights, but completely defunded with no money at all to do what you have to do. And so what do you do in those contexts? You have to try to find another way. Some people go to ask for refugees, some people just leave their country, some people go into the clandestinity to fight for justice, and all those kind of things happen. It's in that context in which I fled my country, and it was a difficult context. It was there's a lot of grief. You had to lose everything basically you had done. You arrived to a place where you don't speak. I didn't speak English at all. I remember when I arrived here, the only thing I could say is good morning, good evening, and hi, my name is Eloy, and yet people think, what? People didn't. It was very bad my English. Now it's a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure you guys are having troubles to understand what I say. But yeah, that time was an extremely difficult. This grief. You have no contact, you have not much money to do all those kind of translation, and it's a very difficult. I put myself. That's how I became involved with Solidarity Because Borders Out. That's how I became aware of the fact that I have to do something. I learned, for example, that there are people that, I was relatively, with contacts there. When you work in human rights, you can know people here. I know a friend who is an Amnesty International in Montreal, visit him, or, you make a call to somebody. But when you arrive from with 2 kids, escaping violence, escaping persecution, with no money, no language skill, no knowledge of anything of the country you arrive to, it's just incredible difficult, and there is a lot of suffering involved. And so that's why I am here. Yes, that's why I do what I do as well.
Thank you. I think sharing stories is really important. So I appreciate you taking the time to share your story. Do you think that, these experiences and your experience in becoming a Canadian citizen, has it helped your work at Solidarity Across Borders and your research?
Absolutely. I when I started study, because I always liked academia, even though I was doing work in human rights there, I was publishing things. I like intellectual work, let's say. It's funny because my family, my parents are illiterate, in fact. I mean, they learned to read and write just a very advanced age. When I had access to school, in fact, they never had access to school. And so nobody in my family has this background, but I don't know, I just have some love for books and for reading and writing and thinking. And I don't know if I do it well, but I do it, And so definitely when I was studying here, I got into grad school. At some point I got a scholarship. And that's another wonderful thing in Canada. There are spaces like universities, you can have access to scholarships and things like that. And that's the only reason I went into grad studies, in fact, here in Canada, because I didn't have access to jobs and any kind of thing. So grad studies continue. So I went to it and I learned a concept that is called the sociological imagination. And basically the sociological imagination says that in order to better grasp what is going on in your context and to better to develop the capacity to understand such a problem, you have to put yourself, you have to understand that problem in relation to you. So you have to understand you in relation to the problem to analyze. And so basically, a lot of the things that I study are linked to my biography. And I'm going to tell you this, you didn't ask me this, but I think it's important to disclose this. My father was an undocumented person. My father was an undocumented person. When I was a kid, my parents, my mother got pregnant. And so as 90% of the male population at that time in that hometown where I was born. He went to the United States to make some money and to be able to build a little house, for her with her wife and her new kid, myself. And so he went to the United States. He got very sick, very 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 sick, and from the liver. But he didn't know it was the liver, but it was just so difficult, and it was very difficult to have access to the healthcare system in Canada and the United States. He said it was not very difficult. Some people asked me to support me, but it was just working all the time. And so I saved some money, and he returned to the place, where I was born, and I was about to born. And he returned because he said, I want to know my kid before I die, because I think I'm gonna die. And at that time, there was a doctor. That's a story that my family tell me. There was a doctor providing support to this community, because where I grew up is called Tala, Jalisco. It's a very small town, rural town, poor town, sugar cane cutters. And so there was not much jobs and so on. And so there was a guy providing support to them, and he helped my father to have access to hospital. He even helped him with money to go to the city, to go to hospital and so on. And they discovered that it was very, very hard illness, but it was curable. You could cure it with the treatment. And basically that's why I have a father, because that person. And you know what the name of that person is? Is Eloy. I have two names. My name is Hector Eloy, and I was called after him, Eloy. And so my family called me Eloy all the time. And that's probably the reason, actually interesting to talk about this kind of things. We are doing it online. It's funny. It's okay.
Take your time.
I learned through those stories that that people who have access to education, to have something to offer others, can do a difference in the life of others. And I guess that is what is haunting me all the time. Is like you have a father because somebody who was a physician helped him out, and I think that's a calling. I think that's a good thing to think about. And so that's what has shaped my will, my interest on working in migration studies, and also to do my little bit, what I can do to support struggles for human dignity of those who have been misrecognized for being undocumented. My father was undocumented. He's an amazing father. He's a beautiful. I'm gonna send this video to him. My mother uses Facebook. And so I'm gonna tell him about it. And I told you, when I finished my PhD 2 years ago, I went to Mexico, and I went to tell him that, to tell them. But it's what has shaped, I guess, my interest and my passion for what I do, and I think I won't stop doing it. Something that I admire from Solidarity Across Borders is that they never give up. To be honest, they are incredible, and so they are. I always, Mary Foster and so many people in Solidarity Across Borders, Bill, and I just every time I see them, I haven't seen them since COVID for much. Now we see each other for 4 meters. But I will tell them, you guys are my idols, when I grow up, I want to be like you. I tell them in a jokeful way. That's my answer to the question.
It's very beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to say that. And just on the note of the hard work that Solidarity Across Borders does, this is a volunteer position, so you guys, you have lives outside of this, but you're taking a big chunk of your life doing unpaid work, trying to help people. It's very important. Mm-hmm. So I guess moving forward to status for all, do you think that we can provide status for all in Canada, and what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, it has been done in the past. I mean, these countries, Canada and the United States, have been built upon migration, and waves of migration bring, let's say, troubles, in the sense that it creates troubles to the state, in the sense that there are people who are living irregularly and so on and so forth. And amnesties have been put forward to provide a status for people. In the 70s and 80s, just 4 years ago, was put another amnesty for a regularization program for people working in construction in Ontario. And there are so many examples of that. You know, the Portuguese community at some point when they were struggling a lot for status, and they won and they got amnesty as well. And so basically it can be done. It has been done. We just have to recall that, because some people think like, oh, there's such a crazy demand, you know, status for all. No, it's not a crazy at all. It's not crazy at all. It's something that has been done in the past. The fact that we imagine that as a crazy idea, it just tells very much about how the state of affairs are now, that we can have this imagination, radical imagination, to think the world otherwise. But it has been done. What is needed? You know, the government has a lot of experts. You know, there are a lot of experts working in the government, in civil society organizations. You know, the Migrant Rights Network, Solidarity Across Borders, academics. There are so many people upon which we can draw expertise and to sit down a month and to make a plan for status for all. And it's something that can be done. It's something that is just, is fair, and it's also is good for everybody. You know, that people can have access to. They have the right to the city. One of my teachers, David Harvey, with whom I was taking a seminar last year, 2 years ago, before COVID, we finished it online, and he speaks about the right to the city. So people should have the right to the city, and so everybody just living here, you are you know, doing something for people. You don't have to be essential, you know, to be considered an important person. I mean, people who work in mothers who are in their homes taking care of their kids, they are also essential, right? And so everybody should have the access to the city, and it's a matter of really political will. It's because this has been done in the past. It's just a matter of political will, and I would suggest that when the government, you know, really realize that is now in the times of COVID, really a lot of people being affected. I know two people that I interviewed in the past that now are with COVID. Actually, last week has been stressful for me because, you know, I have tried to find places to support them and so on, resources and stuff. But there are a lot of people suffering, and this is not going to be good for anybody. And so this is the moment in which we have to think that we all deserve to be included, that we all are interdependent, we depend from each other, and that we are all essential. And so a program like that would help to create that, you know, to step forward to that society, fair society that we want this to be. It is in some ways, but we have to, you know, there is always room for improvement. And it just matters political will, but I would suggest that the government should ask civil people, organizations, civil society, people like Solidarity Across Borders, but other organizations that provide so important work, people who are experts on their fields and research and in education, in you know, in the political field as well, to just to put efforts together so that this can be done. But it's definitely something attainable, and I hope this will be coming. In the United States, they are doing it now, right? We are not in a crazy moment. In the United States, they are doing it now. They are providing a status for millions of undocumented people. It's amazing what is going on. And so it is possible here. I mean, according to the government, there are around 500,000 undocumented people in Canada, right? According to the government calculations. I think it was 10 years ago, though, but numbers change, but I don't think too much. And so, you know, 500,000 people who can work and have a decent life and send their kids to school. It's just 5,000 people who are gonna overcome precarity, misrecognition, trauma, and so on. And then we are going just to add more beauty to our societies, to our cities now.
When you mentioned the pandemic and inequality, I think the pandemic has highlighted and brought forward a lot of these inequalities. I remember when I attended the Solidarity Across Borders rally in January, demanding status for all. A big subject was the curfew, and you know how a lot of non-status workers, they've had to give up their job during the curfew just over fear of these police checks and you know, being asked for some type of ID, and you know, they don't have any type of Montreal residency or Canadian ID to show them. So yeah, I definitely think the pandemic, it's hard to ignore these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, Montreal Municipal Council, they voted unanimously in favor of status for all. Unfortunately, this won't provide status for all, but their goal is to kind of move forward with putting pressure on the federal government to do so. Do you have any opinions on this?
Yes, absolutely. It's a personal opinion, and there are, in Solidarity Cross Border, there are different opinions about it. Personally, I think that is a very important step forward. It's a very, very, very important. It's not a coincidence, in fact, that it was after the event in which you attended, that you just mentioned. I remember I met you there, and and so many other people. CBC was there covering the news. You made an episode about it, and a lot of people from the press and a lot of people were there. Not a lot of people, but the people who were there were the good ones to make the word out there. And so it was because of those actions and the actions last year that this what is happening now. Amnesty International say the status for all. I know of other big organizations that are planning to do it, and you will see it in the press soon. And I know of Montreal and just the discussion about status for all became a very important discussion in the press, right? It was because of the work of countless number of people who are doing everyday work to make sure this happen, that what is going on in Montreal is going on. And so I think that is an important step forward. We definitely have to move forward. Juliana Fumagalli the other day was saying in one of the interviews that you made with her, very good interview, in fact. She was saying, no, this is just the beginning. We think that the Federation of Municipalities have to do something about it, and I think that's the route we have to take, which is the route of a proposition. We have to make proposals, and so we have to convince people that this issue matters, that is good for everybody, not only for just people who are protesting all the time. And no, it's good for everybody. And I think that's what I think is an incredible, very good historical step forward. And I am very happy that I am in this historical moment, witnessing it. Yes.
Good to hear. How can individuals provide help to people without status?
Yeah, I before I was looking the telephone Solidarity Cross Borders. Here it is. Okay, it's 514-809-0773. 514-809-0773. And the email is solidarité sans frontières gmail.com. And so basically, if people want to do volunteering in Solidarity Cross Border, they just have to write an email or you make a call. I would like to do something. Which kind of committees are there? I think I can do commit these days, or spontaneously. Now, for example, COVID, this is something I think is important to say. In Solidarity Cross Border is a network of people around. There are around 3,000-4,000 people doing different tasks in Solidarity Cross Borders in a decentralized kind of a network, right? And so now there is a very huge number of people providing support to those who have no access to job, who are having troubles to have access to serve, to money, to any kind of things, and precarity because of COVID, people who can't go out because of the pandemic, they lost their jobs and so on and so forth. And so there are a lot of people doing, bringing food to them and sometimes collecting money and bringing them to them and so on and so forth. And so what I try to say is that there are so many things to do. It's just a matter of getting in contact, not only with Solidarity Cross Border, you just can get in contact with other organizations as well. But that's what I do here. And so it's just a matter of getting in touch. Probably people who are following your work and know what you do, and if you know somebody who is interested in doing something, just put in contact with us and we can do stuff. The university, there are so many people doing wonderful little things and big things as well. Students and from Carleton, from Concordia, from McGill, people who are studying law, people who are just doing any kind of other efforts, people who are pinching a little bit of money. And there are so many things to do. It's just a matter of getting in contact with me, I hope with you as well, that you can canalize them, to this telephone and Gmail as well. It is very important.
Thank you. Is there anything that I didn't ask or bring up today that you think is important for everyone to know?
Yeah, well, basically is that I think that the collective efforts, the human efforts to end migrant detention, migrant deportation, migrant imprisonment, are efforts worth to support. The effort that people like you are doing, for example, as well, as I mentioned before, to allow suffering to speak. Let's speak about people who are suffering in our society. What is going on there? They are doing also very important work, and I would really encourage to people who work in communication, formally or informally, can join those efforts, because we need that more than ever. We don't want a society in which people are suffering because they have no status, or because they are immigrants, or because they are, racialized. They have different color of skin, and just that is what. And thank you very much to you for your work.
Thank you very much, Eloy, for all the work you do and taking the time to speak with us and CUTV viewers today. If you didn't yet watch it yet, episode 2 of Local 514 is out, focused on the exploitation of non-status people in the workforce. Please do so on CUTV's Facebook page. Thank you for tuning in, and see you all next time.